Gentlemen, coming up is one of those episodes where we get back to our roots and talk about how to meet and attract women. Now, with that in mind, be forewarned. Having recorded this show, the way my guest Bobby Rio and I talk about attracting women and reading their signals may be, well, a bit overwhelming at first. It may even come off like we're making it sound too easy. But like us, and like most every other normal guy out there, you can do this. If you're compelled to take action and get this part of your life handled, remember always, I was once very frustrated by all of this myself. But I did what it took, and I can stand by you as you do the same. Head on over to mountaintoppodcast.com, get on my schedule to talk about it for free, and let's get you on the right track, once and for all.
Live from the mist-enshrouded mountaintop fortress that is X and Y Communications headquarters, you're listening to the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. And now, here's your host, Scot McKay.
Greetings, gentlemen. Welcome again to yet another episode of the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. My name is Scot McKay, at Scot McKay on both Twitter and Clubhouse. Real Scot McKay on Instagram. The website is mountaintoppodcast.com. You can find all the YouTube videos by searching my name, ScotMckay on YouTube. And I invite you to join the Facebook group. As always, gentlemen, if you're not there yet, you're missing out on a whole lot of fun. And that is the Mountaintop Summit on Facebook. Today with me is a returning guest, a guy who, man, I've known probably for 15 years now. His name is Bobby Rio, and he's from Guy Quiz in New York City. Bobby, welcome back, man.
Hey, glad to be here, Scott. It's always fun coming on and having these conversations with you.
Yeah, man, you bet. And today is going to be, it's going to be a topic that I think knocks it out of the park for a lot of these guys. We're going to talk about little known signs a woman is into you. And, you know, kind of how to know if she's just playing games with you or trying to manipulate you into getting something she wants other than some sort of relationship, you know. And what are some of the ways that guys misunderstand women's signals, which I think is going to be probably just as valuable in that it'll keep us out of trouble instead of getting us into trouble if we don't understand those things. And I know you have very, very specific, actionable ways for guys to figure out what's going on and, in fact, take action. So, man, I think we should just jump right in. What do you think?
Sounds good. Sounds good. Excited.
Yeah. So, you know, we hear a lot about these signals that women send or kind of hints. She's giving you eye contact, or she's playing with her hair, or she laughs at everything you say, even when it's not funny. And guys are like, yeah, you know, the last time I had eye contact with a woman was, maybe never. This whole hair twirling, lip licking, upper lip biting thing just doesn't seem to be really happening in the wild. And indeed, I think those examples are a little specific, you know, for a lot of guys. When women, you know, although they may do some of those things, you know, if that's all you're looking for, you're probably going to be in the wrong headspace anyway, when there's a much bigger surround that can give you the information you're looking for, right?
Yeah. And much like you know, I know we both do a lot of coaching, and I do a lot of coaching over the phone. So when I'm working with a lot of clients, I don't have the luxury of watching, you know, how much eye contact she's giving them, or, you know, is she playing with her hair, right? I have to kind of guide them based on what they're telling me. So a lot of times I ask a lot of questions, or as I'm reviewing maybe their text messages back and forth with her, it's like I'm looking for the things that give me a clear idea of, are you wasting your time? Should you continue pursuing her? Does she like you? Does she not like you? Right? So a lot of times I'm going by the clues that are there that aren't, like you said, is she playing with her hair? Because that's, you know, a guy tells you, you know, I don't even trust a client if he's like, oh, well, she was playing with her hair. Well, I don't know what that means, right? That's not a clear cut thing of, oh yeah, she definitely likes you, right? I'm looking for the things that kind of give me a better picture to help guide them.
Yeah. And implicit in your description right now is you have text-based ways to tell a woman is showing interest in you. And then there are the real world ways. Obviously, a woman can't twirl her hair over a text message, right?
Yeah, exactly. Things that she does, you know, and there's a lot of different stuff, right? And I mean, I want to start off saying something that I always say to clients or whenever I'm working with somebody, right? the ultimate way, right? If you're, and we're going to talk probably both in terms of, okay, you just went on a date with her and you want to know versus maybe it's a woman you've been talking to for, a month and you don't really know how she sees you, right? One of the things I always tell clients though, is like really the ultimate test, right? Is does she make time for you? Before we get into any of the hidden ones, it's like, if I see a woman who never has time for a guy, then her interest level is not that high, because when a woman really is into a guy, she makes time, right? She, after work, no matter how tired she is, she'll find a way to meet up with him, right? If she's coming up with, well, it was a really busy this week, and you're getting that a lot, it's not because she was really, really busy. It's because you weren't a priority for her, right? And I always like to preface that, because a lot of times that's like the most obvious one, but guys don't want to hear it, right? They don't want to hear that, hey, if she's not making time for you, she's not that into you.
Yeah, I have this concept, Bobby, I call pushing it uphill. An interaction with a woman is much easier when you don't have to do that kind of heavy lifting, when you can kind of just coast, as you would say on a bicycle downhill. If you're trying to pedal this thing uphill or push it uphill and you feel like you're doing way too much work for the output you're getting in return, chances are she's not that into you. And sometimes women just don't know how to break things off. They don't want to embarrass you. They don't want to hurt your feelings. They don't know how to say no. A lot of women infamously don't know how to do that. And I don't mean simply in a sexual situation. I mean in any situation. So a lot of women could be simply playing Ms. Nice Girl with you in those situations. And, and a lot of times certain men won't get the hint, especially if they've got a long dry spell going and they're really just hoping beyond all measure that some woman will like them. So in many ways, as we've talked a lot around here, desperation and fear of loss really is a self-fulfilling prophecy and makes women not attracted. And then at the same time, we end up trying harder and we lose even less gracefully, don't we?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And, it's a great way to always put a reminder in there to guys that you always have to be willing to walk away, right? I always tell guys, like, if you're not willing to walk away, if you're not getting what you want out of something and you're not willing to walk away, you're never going to get what you want out of it, right? Because a woman's never going to respect a guy when she knows that no matter what she does, no matter how little time she gives a guy, little priority he is in her life, he's still there like a little puppy dog waiting for attention. He's not going to get what he wants out of the relationship. So really glad you brought that up.
Yeah, savage. Man, guys we're our own worst enemy, as I've often said on this show. We've even had that as a topic central to one or two of our episodes. But what you're saying, Bobby, is such a great place to start. It's an excellent jumping off point because, it should be obvious to us. If this woman is sticking around, if she's smiling, if she likes this conversation, if she's still talking to us when she could have left, if she's returning our text, if she's agreeing to go out with us, that's a great sign that at least there's some interest there. And yet some guys, I don't know if it's because we suffer from self-esteem issues or confidence issues or what I collectively refer to as the too good to be true syndrome, Bobby. But I've had guys contact me, I'm sure you're the same, where a woman's basically throwing herself at him. And he's like, I don't know. She was a hired gun, or I thought she had a boyfriend, or, it's that, she's too beautiful, or she's exactly what I like. Therefore, she couldn't possibly be interested in a guy like me. And sometimes we just have to believe our lying eyes, don't we?
Yeah. And, it's a good segue, right? I have a handful of ones, but one of the ones I always say in situations like that, right, where you're not sure because a woman is sort of giving you a little bit of attention, right? Maybe you're out with your friends at a mutual friend's birthday party. And like you said, a hired gun, a waitress is talking, a waitress might not be a good example in this situation, but, somebody's there and the guy's like, is she just talking to me to be nice because we have mutual friends? I always say the easiest way to kind of figure that out is to move her, right? Say, if you're inside, say, hey, I want to go get some fresh air. You want to come take a walk? Women are very astute, right? Women don't want to lead a guy on if they know, I'm not into this guy. So they'll very easily go, hey, you know what? I'm going to stay with my friends, right? And it gives you kind of an idea. If you say, hey, I want to go get a drink, come take a walk with me. I'm not saying it's like a clear she wants you, but it's a good sign, right? And it allows you to go, okay, maybe she's not just being overly friendly, because a lot of guys, I know when I used to go out, it was hard when you're knowing, is a girl just being an outgoing sort of extroverted girl who likes talking to people, or is she talking to me because, she's interested? The easiest thing that I tell guys to do is see if she's willing to move locations with you. If you're somewhere, will she go outside with you? Will she go take a walk? Will she leave her friends behind for a few minutes to be alone with you? Not alone with you in a corner, alone with you, but just like I said, walking to get some fresh air or to grab a drink together.
Yeah, I think that's very good advice. I think women, if they're willing to leave their friends and self-isolate with you to get cozy or whatever, even if it's a cozy conversation, I think that's an excellent sign. I would kind of hasten to add, though, if she feels like she has to hang out with her friends still and stay close by, I don't think that's necessarily the opposite signal. But in a situation like that, where she would say, well, I want to make sure my friends know where I am, or I don't feel comfortable going outside, or I don't even know you well enough yet to go wandering off with you. Those aren't necessarily bad things. It just may be I'm not ready, or she may have a good valid reason for what she's telling you. And yeah, that kind of reminds me of something else. All through the pickup artist years, Bobby, which you were there for, along with me and everybody else we know.
Yeah.
It just seemed like men were told that women are all social geniuses. They've got everything figured out. They know how to relate beautifully. All their interpersonal skills, their social skills are always just impeccable and polished. And in reality, that's just not true. There are women who just don't know how to act. There are women who I call non-reactors, who for whatever reason just don't know how to show any interest to any man whatsoever, or else they're unwilling to. And I think a lot of guys go through life expecting women to have all the right moves. They're going to send them a signal. Boy, it's going to be obvious to them when that woman sends said signal. And, more often than not, that's just not going to be the case. We have to dig a little deeper, don't we?
Yeah, 100%. And a lot of times, like we alluded to earlier, it's about kind of looking for patterns, right? Especially if you know a woman. It's like, well, how does she act to everybody else? And then how does she act to you, right? So if a woman is flirtatious with, everybody right? And we all have at some point worked with a woman, right? Where she's like the office flirt, and 8 out of the 9 guys there think that she likes them because she's flirting with them. But when you actually watch, she's flirting with every guy there, right? So there's things like that I always tell guys that you want to be aware of, is like, well, if you're looking at her, you can't look at her in isolation and say, okay, she did this to me, because, well, if she did it to you, is that just how she is, right? Some women are just flirtatious. Some women are just act a certain way. It's when her behavior changes dramatically from the way she acts towards other people versus how she acts towards you. And a lot of times, to sort of sum up what you said, is that she's not doing it consciously, right? Like, women aren't out there going, oh, I'm going to bat my eyes at this guy and I'm going to do this to get him to like me. I'm sure there are women that sort of do that overly exaggerated flirting, but that isn't the majority of women, right? The majority of women don't consciously do something. It's sort of just how they act differently is the things that you begin to pick up on.
Yeah, and to go along with that, what came to mind as you were talking is very, very few women, at least relatively speaking, are naturally flirty with everybody. I mean, some women are very friendly with everybody and happy-go-lucky. And indeed, as my wife, Emily, often tells a lot of the women she works with, that's a great way to be, because then at least you're approachable to guys and you're more likely to get asked out by men, as opposed to, say, some woman who runs around with RBF all the time, resting bitch face. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, I mean, if she's being particularly attentive to you, you talked about the waitress, the hired gun, as it were, someone who's on the clock. Hey, you know what? She's female and she's human also. She may actually like you and be attracted to you, even though she's on the clock. But what you're looking for from a waitress would be, for example, is she filling your iced tea a little bit more often than everybody else? Is she staying, lingering, engaging in small talk with you when she really should be filling someone else's iced tea? Is she asking you personal questions? What's your name? Do you live around here? Are you, what are you doing later? Things like that. Those are all pretty telltale signs. And she wouldn't be asking every customer that, obviously.
Yeah. And to kind of give guys a little ammunition, one of the 2 things that I always say, right, to kind of piggyback off of what you just said. One is that a little bit of a counterintuitive flirting sign that most guys kind of get intimidated by, but actually is a good thing, is when a woman busts your balls in a little bit, right? When she teases you, because like a lot of women are just nice to people. And when a woman's nice to you, even if she's sitting there talking to you, it could be, well, you're just a friendly guy, right? But when a woman busts your balls a little bit, that is actually a good sign. A lot of guys take that as a bad sign. Oh, she was like making fun of me. Well, most women don't make fun of a guy who's like they see as like a nice guy that they have no interest in. They make fun of a guy the same way we, as you and I, teach guys to flirt, is a little bit of teasing is fun, right? If it's a playful tease. But another thing, going back to your waitress example, that I tell guys is if you're not sure in those sort of situations, what I'll do sometimes is I'll say something, like say I previously talked to this waitress a couple times and I've mentioned something. Sometimes I'll purposely bring something up to see if she remembers things, because a lot of times, you can kind of tell by what somebody remembers, right? If you're talking to a waitress all the time and last time you talked to her, you were telling her how you just got back from England, and next time you talk to her, she's like, oh, what'd you do last week? And she doesn't remember that you were in England last week. Well, she probably doesn't have that much interest in you, right? Because we would remember things about people that we have some sort of an interest in. So sometimes I'll tell guys, like, say something that you think she should remember. Give her sort of bait. And does she jump on it and say, oh, yeah, how was your trip? Or how was your nephew's softball game that you went to? Like, say something to see, does she remember things, right? I call it sort of remembering tests, because when we like somebody, when we're thinking about them, we tend to know more about them than we should, right? We've all had that girl that we had a crush on, and we know everything about her. And sometimes I tell guys in that situation, you have to reel it back. Like, you have to act like you know less than you do, because it might scare her if she realizes you know all these details because you remember everything of a conversation. But women do that too. When women like a guy, they remember details. So you can purposely sort of bait her to see if she's remembering details or not. And if she's not, I'm not saying you're dead in the water, but it's definitely not as good of a sign as if she's remembering small details of things that you've told her.
Man, there's so much to talk about from what you just described. Two things that come to mind are the idea of busting a guy's balls being a good thing. Man, we really have to check our self-esteem here, because listen, we're taught to tease women and to banter with them, and then we act all offended and like we've just been rejected or something when a woman leads with that kind of attitude herself. I mean, that's not a rejection, that's an invitation. And I've noticed a lot of women who are really quick on their feet and kind of gritty and self-confident will do that because they want a guy who will stand up to them, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Because that's attractive. I mean, if you can't stand up to a woman, you can't stand up for her, right? So a woman will say, oh, you're here again. Look what the cat drug in, like if she's a waitress and you're a regular. And you might go, wow, oh man, she just can't stand me. But look at what else you said. That segues perfectly into your second point. That means she remembers you. That means she knows you're a regular. That means she's used to seeing you. And if you've only been there once or twice, then our brains have to be able to make the right choice. And that depends on where our headspace is, Bobby, in terms of us being a man who believes confidently that he can and should be attracting women, or us having this negative pessimism, thinking women are always going to reject us. In reality, that situation is going to become exactly what you make of it. If you go, oh man, she doesn't like me, she's fed up with me, she wishes I'd go away. Well, I don't think the woman is likely to chase you, saying, hey, no, that's not what I meant at all. I actually like you, dumbass. No, she's not going to say something like that. But, if you say something to kind of return the serve, like if she says, hey, look what the cat drug in, you may say something like, why would a cat drag in a dog like me? Kind of seems counterproductive, doesn't it? And then she would giggle, or, whatever example you want to come up with. And yet it seems like in these situations, it all comes down to what we've really been throwing out on the table here in this part of the show, Bobby, which is a series of patterns you would be looking for, not those individual motions, the hair twirling, the lip biting. You're looking for how things are flowing. You're looking for how this vibe is going, right?
Yeah. And as a guy, that used to really be hard for me, when you talk about the busting the balls, because I would watch a woman, and she'd be with, say, one of my friends, and she'd be kind of saying like, what are you wearing gym sneakers to a bar for? And she'd be saying all these kind of things to him. And in my head, I'm like, oh man, she hates this guy. My friend she's got no interest. Why is he even wasting his time? And then he would wind up getting her number and they'd wind up going out. And then I realized later on, oh, it's not a bad thing when a woman is teasing you like that. It's actually a good thing. And instead of, like you mentioned earlier, instead of getting butthurt and kind of clamming up, it's like dish it back to her, banter it back to her a little bit, because she's sort of instigating. It doesn't necessarily mean she like wants you, right? It just means she's giving you an opportunity. She wants to see if there is any sort of connection there. So don't get scared when it happens, which I used to do, and which I see so many guys do when a woman teases them about something.
Yeah, it's kind of a head check for your own confidence, and confidence is sexy. It's like I've told guys for years now, Bobby, the number one indicator that a guy's good with women is he believes he should be good with women.
Yeah.
Everything else is in second, third, fourth place, distant in the rearview mirror. Guys who believe women should love them generally find that to be true. I mean, I would say along with that, we have to love women ourselves, because if we don't like women, they're going to follow our lead and not like us back. But guys who expect to be good with women tend to be. And this is a classic example of how that pattern presents itself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. One thing that comes to mind, and I know you have several other items to share that will be of huge benefit to these guys, but if a woman is acting feminine, if she's turning on the femininity, if she's acting like a girl in front of you, that's generally a good sign. I mean, when women don't want anything to do with a man sexually, they go into neuter mode. And I don't think that's gender specific, by the way. You know, how can going into neuter mode be gender specific? But what I'm saying is guys will do the same thing. Like if someone who is extremely unattractive to us comes to us and we perceive she's hitting on us, what will we do? We'll go into single word answer mode. We're looking around for an escape hatch. We're not turning on the masculine charm at all. That spigot just gets slammed shut. So when a woman is not interested, you know, she'll go into that neutral mode of not acting very girly or feminine at all. So if a woman is acting feminine towards you, that's an extremely good sign, because after all, Bobby, masculinity and femininity are the catalysts of sexual attraction. So if she's displaying that signal, it can only mean one thing: biologically, primally, archetypally, right?
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned that, because I see so many guys mess that up. And I agree. I always tell guys that chemistry actually happens when you're acting your masculine self and she's acting her feminine self. So something that I've watched happen where when a woman, she'll exaggerate her femininity, right? And sometimes she'll do that by pretending she doesn't know anything about sports when really she knows something, but she'll act like over exaggerate how she doesn't know anything about sports. And I watch guys sometimes, and a woman's like, oh, she'll be watching a baseball game and be like, did he get a touchdown? And you kind of know she's just, overly doing that sort of femininity. And the guy will be like, yeah, I don't watch sports either. And it's like in that moment, she really just wants you to kind of be the man, like, no, that's, this is kind of explain it to her, right? Or when she's talking about cars, or women will over exaggerate how they don't know anything about cars, or if a spider comes into the room, right? And I've seen guys do that where a woman will be like, oh my God, you killed the spider. And then the guy's like, oh, I don't want to kill it. You kill it. I'm like,
fail.
Be the man. Like,
epic fail.
She would have killed the spider if you weren't there. She's doing it because she's giving you an opportunity to women will exaggerate that femininity 100% when they're around a guy that they're interested in. And the worst thing you can do in those sort of situations is sort of lean into her masculinity and kind of bond with her over that, or lean into her femininity. And that's when you wind up sort of in the friend zone, right? If you try to be the scared of a spider guy as well. So
if a woman's acting really feminine, the worst thing you can do when it's an attraction situation is do what they told you to do when you're in a job interview, which is mirror her behavior. Yeah. And you see it all the time, especially when girls have an extremely cute nature, like a very lovable, feminine, happy-go-lucky, giggly nature, or they have a high voice, or they talk very much like a girl. Sometimes you'll hear men kind of descend to her level, talking like her and giggling with her. And those guys, just like you said, are going to end up in the JBF zone, because a woman wants to be turned on. She doesn't want to feel nothing for you. After all, she's a heterosexual woman. I absolutely love it. I think that's fantastic advice. And along the same lines, with that pattern of a woman asking you to be her hero? Can you get this from the top shelf? Can you kill that spider for me? Oh my gosh, gross. What are we going to do? Women love men who can rise to the occasion and solve a problem, have a plan, be a hero. So when women are giving you those opportunities to do that, that's when they're showing attraction towards you. One example I like to tell is I was driving along with a girl in college and she just punched me in the arm. And I'm like, what was that about? And she just started erupting in giggles. What she was doing was seeing how I'd react. If I go, oh my God, ow, that hurt, then I'm not much of a man in her eyes. But the fact that she could punch me in the shoulder and I respond kind of nonchalantly, like, what the hell, just made her laugh. And that was her desire to be turned on by me. A lot of these things guys call tests from women are actually opportunities. And you know what? There's another indicator of where your headspace is. If you're the kind of guy who automatically, by default, assumes women are out to reject him, that this isn't going to work, you view those opportunities as shit tests. That's what the PUA community called them for years. And if we're able to reframe those as opportunities to man up and show her how we can attract her by being a decision maker, by being able to solve a problem, then we're going to look forward to those opportunities and make the most of them, aren't we?
Yeah. And real quick, shit test. I know that's the word that we used to use. And guys, I have so many clients like, she was testing me. I'm like, there's nothing in the world that I love more than getting tested, because when you realize that you're just being tested, she's just seeing if you're cool and collective or if you're going to get thrown off your game by one little comment, and you realize that, it's like you look forward to it.
Yeah.
But, and you made me think of another sort of hidden sign when you're with somebody, right? And as I said, we can talk about someone you're with them, someone you're not. But another one that I tell guys to look out for is intimate gestures, right? And the girl hitting your arm might not necessarily be an intimate gesture, but it could be, right? An intimate gesture. I'll give you an example of something that happened actually fairly recently. I was out with my wife and we're at a party with, mutual people, and there's a woman there, and I started talking to the woman, and I'm away from my wife at this point. And the woman is like, oh, what are you drinking? I'm like, a margarita. And she's like, oh, is it good? I'm like, yeah. She's like, can I take a sip? So the woman takes my drink and she takes a sip, right? She doesn't turn the straw over, nothing. And, I don't really think anything of it because I'm just whatever, I'm married and not really thinking in those terms. But later on that night, my wife kind of goes, she's like, well, what was going on with you guys? Like, she drank from your drink. She's like, she wouldn't do, like, that's a very intimate thing. And it kind of hit me. I'm like, that is. And I started thinking back to a lot of times back when I used to go out and was single and, meeting women. And it was like, that was one of the things that I wasn't consciously looking for. But now when I thought back on it, there was always that moment where they take a drink or they show you their intimate tattoo, or they feel your muscle, right? They'll be like, are you strong? I'm strong. Let me feel your muscle. They'll feel your muscle, or they'll say, let me feel your abs, right? Women will do that. And anytime that it's an intimate gesture like that, you've got to be conscious that, okay, she's being a little bit more intimate than is normal, right? This is not a friendly type thing. And in those cases, if you're interested back, you can feel a little bit more comfortable saying, taking that next step in terms of whatever you want to do. Ask her for her number, invite her somewhere. Definitely look out for those intimate gestures.
Yeah, those can range from the subtle to the overt, can't they? And you've given a good example of both. I'm reminded of some scientific paper I read that compared intimate behavior of human beings, Homo sapiens, to other primates. And they were talking about similarities between these gestures and these social patterns. And one of them was grooming. All primates will groom each other only when they have affinity for each other. So if a woman sees some lint on your jacket and she takes it off, or, oh, you have something here, let me get it for you. That's actually an indication at a very primal level that she likes you. And I mean, I know that's a very specific example, and we've been pretty proud of how we were discussing patterns here, but sometimes if the shoe fits, wear it, right? And, not to be confused with other ones, like one that's coming to mind right now is if her pupils dilate when she's talking to you, she's letting more light in because she likes you. Man, lighting patterns are so unpredictable that advice is therefore unpredictable. So, you take all of this with a grain of salt, but I think you're absolutely right. When she moves closer in, when she's violating your space a little bit, when she touches you, right? A lot of guys talk about kino escalation. And while I'm not a big fan of pawing women up when they're not ready for it or you don't have some kind of, consent to do so, if a woman starts pawing you up, that is absolutely a good signal for sure.
Yeah. And if guys want sort of an innocent thing, and I may have, talked about this before because I just think it's a really great sort of gauge of where you're at. One of the things I tell guys to do, a simple thing to do that's so innocent, but it does give you a good gauge, is if you're talking and she's like, and you're like, I like the Yankees. And she's like, oh my God, I like the Yankees too. Give her a high five, but kind of like let your hand linger there for a second and see what she does. If a woman is into you and it's a flirty thing, she'll let her hand linger there. If she's totally not into you, she's going to slap your hand and pull it away, right? So it's a pretty accurate gauge of how comfortable she is with, and you mentioned you don't like to have guys touching. And I never tell guys start touching a woman, but that's something that's completely innocent. But if she grips your hand or she lets her hand stay there for a second, it's a good sign that, she's interested. And hands really, I always tell guys all the time, hands are really the window to intimacy, right? Once she's comfortable, if you're holding hands with a woman, that's why I even said, going back to one of the pieces of advice that I had said earlier, when I said move a woman somewhere, and what I'll tell guys to do, if it's going well and you're going to walk a girl through a bar, put your hand out and walk her holding her hand and see how she reacts to that, right? Because that's a way. If she takes it, but you can tell she's kind of like, got that limp hand that she doesn't, or does she kind of grip your hand a little bit? Because those are signs, right? And those are ways to know, because like we said all the way at the beginning, sometimes it's really hard, right? Sometimes it's really frustrating for guys when they're like, especially now, because nowadays with all the Me Too stuff, I have a lot of clients who are like, oh man, I don't even know what I'm allowed to do or allowed to say anymore. And it's like, well, there's innocent things that you can do that give her the opportunity to initiate things a little bit so that you don't have to risk, if you're scared to risk these things, right? Putting your hand out so a woman walks through a crowded place with you, you're just being a gentleman, right? But at the same time, if she has no interest at all in you, she's not going to grab your hand. She's not going to let you hold her hand. So it's a way to know where you stand without crossing any lines.
Speaking of crossing any lines, escorting her across the street. Arm in arm instead of hand in hand, taking her jacket off for her when you take her out to dinner and putting it on the back of the chair, pulling her chair out for her. All those things are kind of intimate gestures, and if she shows appreciation for them, then you're in good shape. I'm reminded of how David D'Angelo used to say, if a woman lets you touch her hair, she'll let you kiss her. And a lot of guys started trying to touch women's hair, willy-nilly based on that advice. But, at the end of the day, it is kind of true. If a woman lets you touch her hair, she'll let you kiss her. But the trick there is getting to the point where you touch her hair, right? I suppose. One of the things that also comes to mind is when women put themselves in your way, when they get into your space and you start thinking to yourself, all right, well, you know what? I'm seeing this woman in this crowd more often than any other person, or she just keeps appearing at places. Like if you go to school, like a university, and you start seeing her places and it seems coincidental, or if you're at a grocery store, this is an example I like to give, and you start seeing her on every aisle because she's walking in the opposite direction you are, chances are that's on purpose. And I think something that shouldn't be left unsaid here is when women don't feel comfortable with you, they don't do things that show they're comfortable with you.
Exactly.
Like when a woman isn't interested in you sexually, she's not going to act like a woman. She's going to try to get further away from you rather than closer in proximity to you. She's going to want to see you less often instead of more often. She's going to want to go the other way in the grocery store rather than seeing you up and down the aisle every time like that. And, this kind of falls under the heading of common sense. Yet, boy, do our brains play tricks on us when we just don't have the confidence in women that we should.
There's two things that jump to mind as what you were saying, which is really, really great advice. I can remember one time being on this tour, and I was there with a couple of my friends, and there was a group of girls there on the tour as well, and they kept slowing down. They were in front of us, and they would slow down, and we kept we kept thinking, like, they must be slowing down because they want to talk to us, right? But at the time, we're like, no, it's probably just. And then, sure enough, it happened so many times that finally we're like, we got to talk to them. And they even said, like, it took you guys long enough. We kept slowing down so that you would come up to us, and you guys never did. And then a second thing that I would say is a very good signal, and I've noticed this a lot, and I've actually recommended guys use this as an opening line, is women will eavesdrop. And if they want to talk to you and you're not really giving them attention, and they hear you talking about, let's just say, a Netflix show you're watching, they'll jump in with an opinion. Or if you're talking about, a funny story, they'll jump in and go, oh my God, I had something similar. And when a woman eavesdrops, it's like she's trying to get into the conversation. There's nothing that is more direct than that. If she actively mentions or comments on something you said, it means she's listening to what you're talking about, which if she had no interest, she wouldn't be paying attention. But it also means that she's trying to invite you to bring her into the conversation. And now I tell guys sometimes is like, hey, like, women do that, so do that back, jump in sometimes when women are talking. Now, just like you have to use social intelligence. If two women are talking about, how her aunt died recently and it's a very emotional conversation, you do not want to eavesdrop into that. But if they're talking about a Netflix show or something funny that happened, those are the kind of things that you can jump into. So you can do that as a way to approach a woman that you may be interested in.
As you were talking, it occurred to me not only that is great advice, but that there's room to coin another whole new phrase here that I don't know if anybody's ever brought up. Let's call it the reverse hired gun scenario. I don't know if an acronym would work or not. We're here slipping into our old days of men's dating advice. This is starting to sound more and more like 2006 every time we talk. But I'm thinking, what if you're the guy at work? What if you're on the clock? What if you're behind the counter somewhere, or you're a plumber, or you're the pizza delivery guy? Starting to sound like the plot of a porn movie. But when women have too many issues, or they need to come to you too much, or they're asking too many questions, or they keep calling you, or they keep showing up, or they keep bringing their car to you and you fix the tire twice, and she just wants to make sure the tires are pressured up right. Hey, she's flirting with you. That's interest, because she has better things to do. I think you could sum it up by saying anytime a woman has something better to do than be talking to me like this, and yet there she is, I think you're in good shape. I think she is pretty interested in waiting for you to make a move. And I think a fitting way to close this show, Bobby, would be, what do you do when you know that the signal's there?
When you know that the signal's there, it depends on where you're at, right? Is this a woman you're meeting for the first time, or is this a woman you're out on a date with, right? Because if you're out on a date with a woman, ultimately there comes a point where you've got to go for the kiss, right? Meaning you've got to, you can only go out with a woman so many times and not kiss her before she's like, there's just no chemistry here, right? And guys, I have so many clients that think that they can just make her like me more, I'm going to go out with her again, and I'm going to be even more funny and more attractive. It's like, well, ultimately the key is, do you guys have chemistry when you kiss? Does she want to kiss you, right? So if you're on a date with a woman and you're getting all the signals, don't say, well, I'll kiss her next date, because you might not get another date, especially in modern times where if you're meeting a woman off of a dating app like Tinder and you've gone on a couple dates with her and you haven't kissed her, well, you know what? She's also probably going to be meeting other guys that may kiss her, and you're probably not going to get that third date. So in those situations, I would say you always want to try to take that next step as soon as you can. If it's a situation like we mentioned, a waitress or something, in those situations, in hired gun situations, which I tell guys, like, listen, you got to be careful with hired guns, because you got to be really, really good at judging it. I've seen so many guys fall in love with bartenders or strippers where it's obvious to me that they have no shot, but the women are just, they're doing their job. They're getting the tips and stuff like that. So in those situations, the best thing you can do is say something like, hey, give me your number. I'm going to text you. Have a reason to text them and get their number, send them a text and see, do they respond to your text, right? Because you don't really know 100% in those situations, a hired gun situation, which you've mentioned several times throughout. But if it's a girl in a social circle or a girl you're meeting at a party or a coworker, in those situations, yeah, it's a lot easier to be a little bit more, I want to say, direct about what you're going after, because you can be more confident in those situations rather than, a bartender or someone whose part of her job description is being nice to you.
Well, the whole idea of allowing oneself to slip into a crush towards a sex worker is probably fodder for another whole episode.
Oh, yeah.
And I famously am very much against doing that.
Yeah.
I had a guy call me one time and he wanted to get his girlfriend back. And said girlfriend was a porn star he met at AVN one year, who was friendly towards him while she was in the booth. And he tweeted back and forth with her once. So, that sounds a little psycho, I know. But, the guys who believe the only women who are sexual are the women who are paid to be sexual. Like, I need to date a stripper, or I need to date this one girl from OnlyFans because that's the girl who has sex with me. Well, can I tell you about the kindergarten teachers and the women who are in a business suit all day, who are horny little vixens once we attract them and make them feel comfortable with us. I love your suggestion about going for the kiss. You have to have the mood right, the situation, the location has to be right. And of course, I'm all about informed consent. But, when a woman is showing interest in you and you're reading the signals correctly and it's a sure thing, absolutely, it's time to kiss her. And if you don't, the next guy will, because he'll have the brass balls you did not. While that suggestion is great, I have another one that goes along with it. I think too many guys, even vis-a-vis strong evidence that she likes him, are afraid of issuing a verbal notification to the woman that, hey, you know what? I like you. I mean, she's wondering as much as you are. She's probably on the other side, poor thing, thinking, does this guy like me? Am I seeing what I think I'm seeing? Hey, you're the man. Lead. Remove all doubt. Tell her, you know what? I like you. I think this is going great. You look even better than your pictures. I'm already glad I met you. This is already going well. And sometimes when you say something like that, it's scary at first, because we've been taught by men's dating advice for 2 decades now that you never give women compliments. Say no to a beautiful woman every day. You're going to look needy. You're going to look clingy. Hey, that's for newbies who lack confidence and who have not done the self-work to come off like a confident man who's a chooser instead of a chaser. If you are a big 4 man and you have a woman in front of you who you like, tell her so. Because she's not going to think you're needy or desperate. She's going to feel chosen. And that is a very confidence-inspiring thing for a woman. But yet, a lot of guys just can't seem to verbalize it.
Yeah.
Yeah. This has been a great conversation, and I want to point guys to something you call the guy quiz, Bobby. Before I give the URL, go ahead and tell guys what they can expect when they go there.
Yeah, so one of the things that, and you probably experienced this, right? Scott, you and I have been coaching now for about 15 years. And what I realized is that a lot of stuff and a lot of situations that may seem very, very intuitive to us or almost like second knowledge, right? Of course you do that. A lot of guys don't know this stuff. And so what I did was I put together a quiz with 10 common situations, right? And then a multiple choice of how would you handle this situation? And then after guys answer it, it gives you a score of where you fit. I call it on the nice guy spectrum, right? Meaning how much are you, making the mistakes that you shouldn't be making at this point. And it kind of, it does a job. And what I find is a lot of guys are shocked because a lot of guys take it and they're like, man, I know this is easy. And then you get to the end and they find out that, wow, I was making a lot of mistakes without even realizing it, right? So I think it's a fun quiz that guys can take, but it's also very educational because it also explains why certain answers were right and certain answers were wrong, right? Just to give you a very quick example of one of the questions, you mentioned earlier when a woman gives you a test, right? Well, how do you respond to that test? And how you respond matters, right? So one of the questions is a woman, and I give an example of a common type of test a woman will give you, and there's 3 ways to respond. most guys get that question wrong because they're not aware they're being tested. They're not aware that acting butthurt is a wrong response, or that showing anger is a wrong response, or apologizing, right? If a woman says, hey, I don't like your hat, Scott, and you're like, oh, sorry, I won't wear it again next time, and you think that's helping you, a lot of guys actually think that apologizing for something that they didn't do wrong is a good thing. So I think it's a fun test for a lot of guys and very educational as well.
Yeah, sounds powerful. MountaintopPodcast.com/guy quiz is where you'll find it. GUYQUIZ. Sounds very worthwhile. Guys, go check it out. And Bobby Rio, thank you so much for joining us for what I think is your third time on this show. Always a pleasure. Always great content. Good stuff, man. Thanks for dropping by.
Yep. Thanks for having me, Scott. Always fun.
Yeah. And gentlemen, if you haven't been to mountaintoppodcast.com lately, go ahead and sign up for 25 minutes to talk to me about what's going on in your life right now with women. I have a sneaking suspicion that this particular conversation has made some of you guys out there angry, or at least feel like you have ants in your pants about this stuff. It's kind of turned the pressure cooker on a little bit for you. It's like, yeah, these guys are talking about getting signals from women and going out with women and kissing them and making the right decision and doing the right thing and having women love them. And I just don't see it happening. Well, we need to turn that ship around. Go to mountaintoppodcast.com, get on my calendar, 25 minutes free. If you need to talk to me longer than 25 minutes, hey man, no worries. We're going to get you in front of the women you're going to be attracted to, and better yet, we're going to make it so they're attracted to you in return. It all starts with a 25-minute call that you can schedule at mountaintoppodcast.com. While you're there, please visit Jocko Willink's company, Origin in Maine. Check out the greatest jeans I've ever worn. I also have a pair of their Bison boots, which are, man, just the greatest shoes. And the combination of wearing the Origin jeans and those Bison boots, I'll tell you what, when I go out, women take notice. Don't have to wear a tuxedo, don't have to look like James Bond, only have to get those jeans and those boots going, and you are dressed like a man. And also check out the fine folks over at herosoap.com. I've said it before, I'll say it again. If you're not using their body wash, especially when you're taking a shower with a woman, boy, are you missing out on one of life's relatively hidden pleasures. So that body wash is there for you, along with their great soap that you can use every day to feel clean and healthy and indeed smell like a man. And you can use the coupon code Mountain10 with either Origin in Maine or Hero Soap to get an additional 10% off. And you can find links for both of those sponsors as well as a whole bunch of other goodies when you, again, visit mountaintoppodcast.com. And until I talk to you again real soon, this is Scott McKay from X&Y Communications in San Antonio, Texas. Be good out there.
The Mountaintop Podcast is produced by X&Y Communications. All rights reserved worldwide. Be sure to visit www.mountaintoppodcast.com for show notes. And while you're there, sign up for the free X&Y Communications newsletter for men. This is Ed Roy Odom speaking for the Mountaintop Podcast.